I'm very excited to share with you our first tuning protocol session. And that's going to help us structure the conversation today. And the way it's going to work, folks, in just a moment, I'm going to introduce you to our guest educator presenter, Dr. Judy, who is going to take a few moments to share with you an assessment that she's created for her students. And this is an assessment that she's actually used with her students. And she's going to ask you some very specific questions about what she wants you to look at in this assessment. Because at one point, folks, you are actually going to go in to Padlet and you're going to be able to take a look at the work that Dr. Judy is presenting and look for evidence in order to answer her questions. And then your microphones will be open once again, and you'll have an opportunity to talk with each other about the evidence that you found in Dr. Judy's assessment that helps to answer her questions. She's seeking feedback from you. That's why this is called a tuning protocol. She wants to fine-tune her work, and your insight and your feedback are very, very valuable. So we want to hear from you. And once you have had opportunity to share with each other work to help answer her questions, turn her phone back on, and she'll be able to comment on all of the wonderful feedback that you've given her. So this is our opportunity, folks, to have time together to really talk about and learning. And our session outcomes today, I have another screen over here that I'm going to read. So we have 4 session outcomes that we have for you today, specially designed for this conversation. The first one is that Dr. Judy will receive direct and respectful feedback to answer her questions, and that's all going to come from you. You will analyze those tuning artifacts, all within Padlet, aligned to her questions. You will then engage in a professional dialogue relative to the process, and you will engage in professional dialogue about the protocol at the end when we debrief, because we want to have an opportunity to talk about how this session worked for us. So that's a real quick overview of the rest of our time together today. And with that being said, I want to once again remind you that Dr. Enid is facilitating chat, so feel free to use that. And please get into Padlet, because that's where all those artifacts are. And that being said, I'm now going to turn the microphone over to our guest educator presenter, Dr. Judy.
Good morning. Thank you, Lisa. And I will start out by apologizing for the background noise. When I came in here, it wasn't quite this noisy, and I'm sure by the time we finish up, it will be eased up. But in the meantime, I will just go ahead and give you some basic information. I teach a section of the Introduction to the Teaching Profession, and that's EDF 2005. This is a course that's for pre-service teachers, and realized my camera is not on. Where is that? It's a course for pre-service teachers, intended to be the initial course that they take when they commit to joining into the teacher education program. This one is a foundational course. It offers a basic introduction to a wide variety of topics and issues that they're going to be encountering throughout the teacher education program, as well as once they actually get into the classroom. So, and a lot of the topics that are covered in this course are addressed in more depth in later courses in their program. This particular assignment is about a third of the way into the course, after having discussed the items within the first part of the text. And so it's intended as a way for them to review some of the topics that we've discussed, take a look at them, and come up with one that they would like to get more in depth with. And so the questions that I am sharing with you is, first of all, I can be a little wordy at times, are the guidelines that I have posted for them, clear and specific without being ambiguous. And then the other part is, does the rubric effectively assess the assignment? And the rubric that's showing up in your Padlet is the one that I used at the start of the assignment. That is a self-reflection. I introduced the whole idea of using Adobe Spark to them in a photo essay and asked them to just reflect at that point, cold essentially, on what they wanted to, what they knew about the topic at that point. And then I use the same rubric with points added to it, with the blank space in the middle being for the instructor feedback. So at that, I am going to close my mic because there's too much outside noise for you, and I want you to be able to go ahead. So thank all of you for joining in and for being willing to share this with me. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, folks, you know, again, you know, Judy's location right now is not ideal, but I hope that you were able to hear a little bit of her background. Those questions and all of the artifacts are found in Padlet, and Lori is actually showing you a little bit of what you can see in Padlet, but what you're going to need to do is make sure that you click on the link that is in the chat in order to fully see all of those documents. You'll be able to see all of those documents on your own. You'll be able to navigate on your own once you click on that link. So before we get into the actual examination of the work, because I'm literally going to give you about 3 minutes or so to take a look at the work on your own, remembering we have 2 specific questions that Judy has asked. But before we get into that, I'd like the microphones to be opened again, not Dr. Judy's. Does anyone have any questions about what you are looking at? Does anyone have any questions about using Padlet?
I do have a question.
Okay.
So Dr. Judy said that she uses the rubric without the point cold. I'm thinking about the assignment before they actually create the assessment, the essay. Is that correct? So again, I just needed clarification on how she's using the rubric before and after. I think I understood that she gives them the rubric first as a self-reflection to know what they know about the assessment or to start getting them think about it. And then she uses the same rubric with the points to provide feedback. I just want a clarification on that.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, folks, thank you. Anyone else questions? I know Enid's on the chat, so she'll be there to help out. All right. So at this point, what I'm going to ask everyone to do, Lori, if you can put Judy's questions, her focus questions on the screen for people. We have 2 questions that Judy is asking us to give her feedback on. One of them are in reference to the guidelines, and the other one is the rubric. So if you can take about 3 minutes or so, and I need all the microphones muted so that folks can concentrate and go in and take a look. And in about 3 minutes, we'll open up again and we'll have a conversation about the evidence we see in Dr. Judy's work. Okay, folks, we're at 12:35. I'd like everyone just to take the next 30 seconds to 1 minute and wrap up your examination of the work. Remember that at this point, we are going to be providing some feedback for Judy and in hopes of answering her questions. So I'd like you just to prepare for what you want to say and how you want to say it. So we'll take 1 more minute and then we'll start the conversation. Alrighty, folks. So we're going to begin having our conversation. This part of the session is where we present our warm and cool feedback. We're going to start with warm feedback, and warm feedback is the positive that you found in the work in answering Dr. Judy's questions about guidelines and the rubric. So this is the time where we want to give that positive feedback, all based off of what you saw, the evidence that you saw in her work on Padlet. So we'll start with that, and then we'll share some what we refer to as cool feedback, which are not judgmental statements, but more phrased in the I wonder if question. For example, I wonder if Dr. Judy thought of this, or my thinking is maybe Dr. Judy would consider this. And we're going to be having a conversation as though Judy is not even on the session. She is going to remain silent. She is going to be taking notes and just listening to us as we talk about the evidence that we found in her work in alignment to those two questions on the screen. And Lori, I'm going to ask that as people talk about the evidence, perhaps you can put on the screen the section that they're referencing.
Okay.
And folks, as you're providing your evidence, maybe you could just tell Lori where you found whatever it is you'd like to share, and then she can put that up on the screen. And at this point, I'm going to ask that the microphones be opened. And Gabby, if you could just make sure that we don't have a lot of background noise. So if we do hear a lot of background noise, then I'm going to ask that you go ahead and mute that microphone. All righty? We all set? Yes? Okay. So microphones are open, and I'm just going to offer it up. Who'd like to begin?
I would begin. I'd like to begin.
Thank you, Nancy.
First of all, Dr. Judy, what an interesting assignment. I love this idea of photo essay. Some of the things that caught my attention, utilizing Adobe Spark, I thought was interesting. I found the instructions to be pretty clear. I'm not sure if I should be saying this now or not, but my only suggestion would be maybe to include a link on the instructions on how to use Adobe Spark, so that way it's easy for the students to access that if it's the first time they're using the tool. Because that was the first thing that popped up in my head is I've never used it, and you know, how do you go about that? But I really liked the level of detail. It's very clear. He explained the different components that you need in a photo essay. It was great. The sample photo essay was there. And do you want to cover the rubric as well, or we're just focusing on the instructions?
Well, first of all, Gabby, can you make sure that the microphones are muted if we're seeing a lot of the noise coming from certain microphones? Thank you. Nancy, would you ask your question again?
I was gonna also touch on the rubric. Do you want to only focus on the instructions right now, and then we'll go to?
No, you can talk. You could add to the rubric because, like I said, Judy's taking notes, so it's all set. Go ahead.
I really like the rubric. The only suggestion I had, at least for the self-reflection rubric, is to maybe include what a well-developed photo essay would have, one with needs improvement, you know, what it would be lacking, just to kind of allow the students to get an idea of, what does exemplary work looks like in comparison to maybe one that's lacking some of the main components there, just to give them a clear idea. So when they're evaluating themselves, they kind of know what they're looking for, even though the description's there, the criteria. And I think, and I would suggest, other than just doing a reflection, this is a real, I love visuals, and I think the photo essay is so cool. I would even consider maybe doing a peer assessment where students get to share that work with each other, because, you know, the images, and I just think it would be a lot of fun.
Mm. Excellent. Thank you so much for that warm and cool feedback, Nancy. And Lori, thanks for navigating the Padlet so we could have a visual. Someone else.
From Thagio, I would love to do that assignment. I believe the instructions and rubrics are clear and provide a clear picture of how the assignment will be assessed. I wonder if students will be asking how long the reflection has to be. In my experience, students are always asking how many pages, and I'm pretty sure Dr. Summers will have that question. And yeah, you're right. They're always wanting to know how many pages, how many words.
Yeah.
Excellent comment.
Thank you so much, Thiago. Someone else? We have time for one more. Who else would like to give some warm or cool feedback? Mary, go ahead.
So to answer the first question, I thought the instructions were very detailed and well organized. She started with the feedback, the background of the assessment and where it falls in the, which has to do with what she said at the beginning about the assessment. I have a comment though about the way she's using the rubric for this dual purpose. And I wonder if the instructions could be a little bit more detailed about the fact that we're going to be approaching the assessment with the same rubric at the beginning to get you exactly what she said at the beginning. I did not see that come through as clearly as when she said it here.
Yeah, I wonder if she's considered that. I was actually thinking the same thing, Mary, where in my experience, students, regardless of their use of rubrics, struggle with the connection between those critical elements or the criterion in the rubric and how it aligns up to those instructions. So like what we see on the screen, your photo essay should include the following. I wonder if Judy considered maybe underlining or maybe putting a word in the beginning. Could you scroll down, Lori, to the rubric? Or actually, I can look at the rubric. I have it here. So, for example, like one criterion is photographs and the other is essay topic, right? So I wonder if Judy considered for the section in, where is it? For instructions, photo essay should include. So putting, I'm not making much sense, essay topic, colon, and then a descriptor of what that essay topic is. And then conclusion, colon, and then what the conclusion should contain. And I think that, in consideration of what Nancy was talking about in terms of an exemplary, or what we call an anchor document, I think that would really help clarify. Excellent. Anyone else, folks? Final thoughts, warm and cool feedback?
If I may, I do think the rubric effectively assesses what she set out to assess. I think it's really detailed. My only comment was the relationship between the first time they use it and the second time they use it. The rubric itself, I think it's really well developed.
So, Mary, do you have any suggestions or things that you think Judy may have considered between the connection between the pre and the post use of the rubric?
I know she has it linked right underneath her instructions. I would just add something like we're going to be using the same rubric, but the first time is before you create your assessment. And why is she using it right there and then?
I see that. Sure. Yeah, I wonder if she considered that. Okay, excellent. Thank you. And anyone else, final thoughts before we move on to the next section of the protocol, which is time for Dr. Judy to reflect on what we've said. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. And I'm going to ask that all of the microphones be muted at this point, with the exception of Dr. Judy's. And Dr. Judy, hopefully the noise has subsided where you're at.
A little bit, yeah.
And so, Dr. Judy, this is your time. I'm sure you took notes. You had some pretty specific feedback to answer both of your questions. So this is your time to reflect on what you heard. You don't have to answer everything. You don't have to comment on everything. But this is your time to sort of help us make some connections about what we examined, what we saw as evidence in alignment to your questions.
Are you kidding me? I appreciate the opportunity to get this kind of feedback from this kind of quality faculty and friends. This is incredible. Okay, so one little piece of background information. The course that I teach is a hybrid course. So it's partially online, partially in class. And to respond to Nancy's first comment, I did in the class when I introduced the assignment, had them bring in their computers or whatever and actually literally sit and go through Adobe Spark with me in class, so that and showing them the different parts of it and how it works, and of course linking them to the guides from Adobe as far as using it. So they did get some background in using Adobe Spark. And in retrospect, the sample, obviously, that I provided was one that followed it pretty well. I had some that were not quite as, as specific and followed it quite as well. But still, for the most part, they all did get to submit it and create it in a way that that actually looked pretty good. They all really looked good. The ideas about sharing the instructions, and I truly appreciate that information. In listening to the comments, I'm wondering if it was effective to use the same rubric essentially for scoring it as I did for the self-reflection. So I'm not sure if that's something that needed to be changed, but I really wanted them to have the opportunity to reflect, and they actually did 2 reflections. One before they started the project, but after they had, sorry about the extra noise here. And one that was after they had completed the project, what their thoughts were at that point before they saw my comments on it. So Mary, you commented about the amount of detail in my instructions. Was it too much detail? I would have to ask. And my response to Thiago, first of all, I'd be happy to sit with you and share the information that I have on doing that as an assignment. I'm really pleased with the way it turned out, and I'm glad that you felt like it was something worthwhile. And as far as the question about how much information, I did get that, and I tend to kind of slough around it by saying, make it as long as it needs to be for you to accomplish what you need to accomplish. That said, some were a little on the short side, which is, can happen. But I do like the comments about adding some more detail as far as the Lisa, that was in the instruction part, but that then would connect to where it was in the rubric, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So I am in total appreciation for everything that all of you took in. I mean, doesn't get any better than this, to have a whole group of people looking at something and saying, well, let's do this and let's do this and let's do that. True collaboration. I love it.
Oh, thank you, Judy. I'm glad. And it's always good to get together and talk about teaching and learning, because that's what it's all about, right? So, Lori, would you please bring us to the Padlet page and put the debrief questions up on the screen? That'd be great. So, folks, we're going to open up the microphones one final time, because this is our debrief. This is a time for us to reflect a little bit, all of us as a community of practice, on the last 45 minutes or so of our time together. We have 3 questions that we have on the screen. You don't need to answer them in order. You don't need to have to answer all of them. Those are 3 questions for you to consider. But this is our time again as a community of practice to share our experience with each other. So the first question has to do with the impact. So how has this session impacted your practice? Do you have a takeaway? Was there an aha moment for you, something you'd like to try, maybe a change that you're going to make to a rubric or maybe your guidelines? How well did this process work? The process being the protocol that we use. What did you feel about, how did you feel about the structure that we provided today, where we went from one person to the other, opening microphones and closing microphones? And then what went well overall in general, and what can be improved? I do want you to know, before we open up the before we get to the debrief, Dr. Judy's location had to be changed, and there was really nothing that we could do about it for today. So we do recognize that her background was noisy, and we appreciate your understanding. But that's obviously something that today that we could not have changed. But let's get back to the debrief questions. Anyone can begin. Who would like to begin with debriefing? Just a few moments on debriefing, folks.
I could start, if you don't mind.
No, thank you, Nancy.
I really like this, the format used today. I think it was engaging. It was very interesting. It was great just to hear everybody's different viewpoints, and actually going through another educator's kind of like assignment really got me to kind of reflect on assignments that I assign in my course, and maybe things that I overlook, because I noticed the level of detail she had kind of opened my eyes that, I need to make sure to kind of go back and make sure that's something that I include. I felt like the process, the protocol you guys had was great, and it was great to hear from other participants, people attending the professional development session. I honestly don't have anything regarding how it can be improved, but this was a lot of fun.
No, thank you. Thank you, Nancy. And, like we said before, folks, this is brand new for us. We know that not everyone's comfortable talking over a microphone, but we do want to encourage that for future sessions. I'd like to ask one more person, feedback, debrief from today's session.
Lisa, I have a few things. When Judy was talking, Nancy replied and said, yes, that is great. Thank you, Judy. And Thadia also stated to thank you. And again, impact, great idea to use with future students, and very nice rubric to model. Process worked well. The only thing I can improve is finding a space where it will not bother my office mates.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And, this is, once again, this was a tuning protocol. And this type of protocol can be used in any setting, virtually or face-to-face. And it's a time for individuals to share a piece of their work, to get feedback from colleagues. And it's a great way to have that type of conversation happen in a safe environment, right? Free of judgment and criticism. So thank you all for that. for your debriefing and for today's conversation. And so we're just about ready to close out. So on behalf of FAU Center for Online and Continuing Education, my team and I thank you for joining us today in this important conversation again about teaching and learning. And since the university is closed next week in observance of Veterans Day, we ask you to please join us for our next session on Monday, November 18th with Dawn Frood, our very own collections development librarian. She will be joining us to share information about demand-driven acquisition of ebooks. I can't wait to hear about that. And finally, we really want to continue meeting your needs through engaging, effective professional development. And really, in order to do that, we want to personalize sessions to serve you, our community of practice. So we are going to be sending out a very short 1-minute survey. The link will be anonymous and found in our follow-up email from this session. So please, if you could just take 1 minute to fill that out, we would appreciate your feedback so that we can continue to serve your professional development needs. And again, thank you so much for sharing all of your time with us this afternoon. We appreciate it.
I would like to thank Judy for allowing us to go into something that she has created for her students and giving us the opportunity to learn from what she does in her classroom.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
I would like to thank everybody for joining in and thank this absolutely amazing team that is able to pick up and do whatever it takes to make it happen. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, attendees, for joining us, and thank you to the team. And that's all for now. We'll see you on November 18th. Enjoy, folks. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.